Hello and welcome to Secrets of My Success, part of For the Love of Chiropractic podcast series. On each episode, I'll be interviewing one highly successful doctor or business person, asking them what are their 3 keys of success or secrets they've used to make themselves so highly successful. So let's get started with today's show. On today's show, I have a very special guest. This doctor has had the $1 million practice, collected over $1 million a year. This doctor has had associates in and out of the office over all the years. And now he's decided to refocus the practice because, as he says, his kids are beginning to age out. And as they continue to grow, he wants to spend more time with them as they transition into adulthood. He says he's been coached by the best. He's been a chiropractic coach himself. And now with all that under his belt, he's created the exact lifestyle he desires. He says he still loves chiropractic, he'll always be a chiropractor, and probably eventually transition down to fewer and fewer days in the office, maybe 2 days a week at some point, as long as he can still stand on his own 2 feet. Let's listen to today's episode with Dr. Joe Hudak. I have the pleasure of having on the phone with me today my longtime and good friend, Dr. Joe Hudak. Joe, are you there?
Yes, I am, Rob. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. It's always great to hear your voice.
Likewise.
So just for our listeners, I got to ask you, so remind me, how many years have you been in practice?
We're just coming up on 30 years. Next year, we'll be celebrating our 30th anniversary in solo practice.
That's awesome. Okay, so you mentioned solo practice. Before we talk about that, let's wind the clock back. Like, how did you become a chiropractor? Why did you become a chiropractor?
So I share this at all of my talks, lectures, and if I get to have a personal conversation with a patient about my passion. I was the 3rd child born. There's 8 years between my next closest sibling, and so I came along. Oops. And I reached about 1 year of age. And every time I stood up on my feet, right, we crawl before we walk. And so it was a little bit delayed walking. And my mother noticed that every time I stood on my feet, I would fall to my left. So she brought me back to the doctor at the time, and we were going back a few decades, Rob. But she brought me back to the doctor, not for an exchange or a refund, because I was a little very, very cute baby. But she wanted to get things checked out and like why I was falling. So, and at the time, diagnostics were a little less, a little more archaic. And he came out of the room after taking an x-ray, and his head was down. And he says, "Well, I apologize, but your son has a dislocated hip." So if you've ever been in the room, they grab the baby's ankles and they push the knee outward and hip backward. I believe it's called Ortolani's test, where they see if there's any hip dislocation, and the femur would pop through this. You would see 95% of hip dislocations are anterior. Unfortunately, mine was posterior. So when they did the Ortolani's test at birth, they didn't notice. I was a cesarean section. I was born, I think it was about 10 pounds, 10 ounces, and put weight on since. And I was cesarean section, delivered feet first. So the doc dislocated my hip.
Sure.
And because it was not detected for about a year, obviously there was some atrophy, and so there was presented with a short leg. So I'll fast forward from 1 year on to probably middle school. I was on every medication you could think of: anti-inflammatories, steroids, muscle relaxers, pain relievers, 4 or 5 different medications, and I wore Forrest Gump-like braces. And I would sleep with my feet in these work boots that were connected to a plate to correct any pigeon toeing. So, so the picture I'm painting is I wasn't the number 1 draft pick for the kickball team at recess, if you can imagine.
Yeah, I get
it. So life goes on, and I think I'm probably 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Somebody recommended, they said, no, we take our son Paul to the chiropractor. And, he puts them back together after Pop Warner football and whatnot. So my parents brought me to a chiropractor. And ironically enough, the chiropractor really talked about a lot of mental headspace too. And he talked about visualizing myself being better and becoming an athlete and being able to walk. We know what we think about, we bring about, right? So in addition to the physical correction and adjustments and alignments, the doctor also had me, my first intro to positive thinking. Mm-hmm. And I'll fast forward to freshman year in high school. I'm playing football on the high school football team.
Nice.
So my life was completely transformed through chiropractic. Mm-hmm. And I still to this day have about 1.25 inches short leg. They decided at the time not to do any leg bone extension surgeries. So I compensate. I have quite a millimeter difference on my AP lumbopelvic x-ray. You could definitely see the hip height change. And there's some slight scoliosis in the lumbar spine, but I've managed and compensated throughout the years of chiropractic care. So I really love to share that story with a lot of people because it's not just about, it wasn't for me about headaches or back pain.
And that's awesome because, anybody who knows you or anybody who takes the time to look up Dr. Joe Hudak online, what they would see or what they will see is an amazingly fit bodybuilder who's actually even competed in body sculpting. So you have truly, overcome that, through yourself and chiropractic. So it's absolutely amazing. All right. So fast forward, you get out of chiropractic school. What'd you do when you got out?
So we're sitting in clinic in the basement waiting for our, you have to see a week's worth of patients in our modern practice now within 6 months to get out of clinic, right? You have to do your couple hundred adjustments. So I'm sitting in the basement and I was tired of waiting tables in Long Island. And I saw a paper with the tear-off sheets, like Lost Dog. Mm-hmm. And it said spinal screening's $25 an hour. And this is where, we're going back 30 plus years. So I grabbed my friend Damien. I said, I'm going to call this guy. We're going to go do some spinal screenings. Because I remember at the time when everybody was trying to study for state boards in chiropractic school and renting out VHS tapes on gross anatomy, I was renting practice from the library. I was taking out practice management videos. Yep. And I said, you're right. We already learned the academia. I just want to learn how to develop and build a practice. So I was listening to cassette tapes and watching videotapes on how to do spinal screenings and phase placing x-rays. And that was really my study after the academics in chiro school. So we go and we show up, and it's for a doctor that has a multidisciplinary practice in Manhattan, and his niche was corporate health fairs. So, I remember all the practice management things about left low shoulder and right low hip and how to do a posture analysis. We brought the old SAM machine in the taxi cab, and I went to my first health fair, and I think we screened 89 people. That number stands out in my mind. And I go back to the boss and his name was Joe also. I said, Joe, I really want to apologize. I said, it was a 2-hour seminar. It was a 2-hour health fair. I only had the opportunity to screen and have these people fill out stress surveys and get their information. And I was only able to screen 89 people in 2 hours. And I seen this guy's eyebrows touch his hairline. And I said, I really want to apologize. I said, I wish I could have done a better job. I only scheduled 45 new patients for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So he kissed me on the left side of my cheek and the right side of the cheek. And within a couple of weeks, I was an associate in that practice.
Nice. And then you associated for how long?
Well, the intention was to come back to Jersey and open up a practice near my hometown. So I was buying equipment and tables, and I remember I had to move my father's Lincoln Town Car out of the garage to put the x-ray machine in there I bought used from a chiropractor. So the intent was never to stay very long. I think I lasted somewhere between 6 and 9 months. Yeah. And had multiple associates come and go after me, and I was the longest one there.
Yeah, that says a lot. All right. So let's fast forward to the practice that you created. So you built a practice. You bought a practice. Or you actually started from scratch.
No, I started from scratch.
Okay, so this practice that you started from scratch, and obviously you're still in that practice. What makes that? What makes your office? What makes that practice unique?
I think what makes us unique and sets us apart of the other 60, chiros in my town is, number one, we still practice old school chiropractic. We have some ancillary therapies, but we're not that laser clinic, and we don't have $200,000 pieces of equipment, that blast scar tissue out of patients. And I think the best thing, we spent 100 years trying to explain what chiropractic is, and it's almost embarrassing reading the rags that come to our office. Like, if I had a potential chiropractic student, there's not one publication out there that I would be able to hand him to read about chiropractic care. It's all this, weight loss and LED lights, and just, there's a lot of noise in the profession, in my opinion. And I think, as part of the success is just continuing to have an old school chiropractic practice.
So let me ask you about that before we explore it further. When you say you just do old school chiropractic, so and you don't have all of these flashy bells, whistles, all that kind of stuff. So tell me about your pricing. I mean, are you racing to be the cheapest guy around?
So someone said something to me a while ago, decades ago. There's only one person that can compete on price in town, right? There's only one guy that can be the lowest. Okay. And Rob, we ain't it. We ain't it. We're probably, and I don't know this, I've never called around, but I would say that we're probably, we have one of the highest fees in the central part of our state.
All right. So you're doing what you do, providing the phenomenal care that you are, without going for the fancy bells and whistles. Now I want to start asking you, tell me about your keys of success.
Keys of success. So that's pretty interesting, and I'm going to describe that in a certain way, right? So we've learned, and we've been in the coaching program for probably most of our professional careers, and we're taught to not think in negatives, right? So when we ask, when coaching clients, we ask them what they want, and usually what we get out of our clients is what they don't want, right? Like, define your ideal practice. Well, I don't want to work Saturdays. I don't want to work too late. I don't want to see a whole lot of new patients. I don't want, right? You get everything that you don't want.
Sure.
So when you talk about keys to success, it's been ingrained in us to talk positively. But I'm going to give you my 3 don'ts.
Okay, and I love it.
And when we spoke about this, when we spoke about the 3 keys to success,
mm-hmm.
My top 3 are: don't be lazy, don't take your work too serious, and don't be an asshole.
All right. So I'm going to ask you to flesh those out a little bit. So talk about don't be lazy a little bit.
Right. So the thing is, do the work. Everybody talks about, you have to work hard. Not necessarily. And I don't want to use a cliche of, work smarter, not harder. Sometimes you just have to put in the work. And I don't know if I never leave the office with any undone soap notes, narrative reports, x-ray analysis, whatever it is. I just get shit done. And, if there's a health fair, or a screening or an event, and we don't do a whole lot of that anymore, but we built our business and practice on that, is show up big, do the work, talk to people. Don't sit behind your table and wait for people to come in. Work hard. Go out and meet people. One of our mentors, and you've heard this 100 times, if you want to double your practice, and this is great advice for new docs in any business, not just chiropractic. If you want to double your business or double your practice, very simply, all you need to do is double the amount of people that know who you are and what you do.
Yep.
Right, because we're getting a certain amount of referrals because you're established in town, and as your circle increases, your referrals and your business increase. It's really not rocket science. So don't be lazy. I say jokingly, because I do the don't be lazy. It's just work. Don't be afraid to get up early and stay late, and put 100% into every part of your day, every adjustment. Go the extra mile. How many times I really want to roll my eyes when one of my older patients say, "Doc, can you take a look at my ankle?" And I got standing room only out. And I'm like, "Yeah, Mrs. Savinsky, I would love to. Please take off your pantyhose." and I'll go clear out a couple of rooms, and I'll come back in and we'll take a look at your ankle. Do the work.
All right. So, and I love the way you said that. So, and then you said your second one was don't take your work too seriously. So how do you balance those two?
Right. So that's exactly it. It's balance. Like, so why do we work anyway? Right. So you could say, "Oh, we work for money," but do you want a pile of green pictures of dead presidents on your dining room table, or do we work to earn the money to create the lifestyle or the freedom for us to do what we want, when we want, with whoever we want, just because we want to do it? Mm-hmm. So, I don't think anybody, Tony talks about that Dickens pattern. No one's going to sit in their rocking chair in their library or their living room or their home, rocking back and forth saying, "I wish I spent more time at the office."
Yeah.
Right. So have some balance. We work for a reason. And that's the sort of the schedule I set up for myself at the end of my tape measure, as I call it, or the sunset of your career. There's a lot of other shit I enjoy, and I love practice, and I'm probably going to do it forever, a couple days a week. But there's a lot of other stuff I really enjoy.
So, and I want to come back to that a little bit later on, but I want to focus in on your third one, because I have no idea where this is going to go. When you say, "Don't be an asshole," what do you mean by that?
Yeah, man, just do the right thing. Go the extra mile for people. Charge a fair fee. Like if you're gonna charge $100 and spend 20 seconds in a room with patient, that's one thing. But if you're gonna go above and beyond, and I do a very unique type of adjustment. Like the majority of the people get off my table after I do their adjustment, and I do their stretching, and I do some long axis stretching, and I sit them up, and I work on their shoulders, and I take a look to see if there's any joint restrictions. When I see that sigh of relief, like, or when a patient turns to me and says, "I don't know how people live without chiropractic. I know that I delivered a great adjustment with exceptional value for the fee I charge." Yeah. So, don't be an asshole. And occasionally when I had associates, people would come in and like, "Oh, I signed up for a 12 visit or whatever package of visits or whatever at the time. And I was heard and I didn't really like the adjustment. And I saw you the first 2 visits and I saw someone else. And you know what? I'm sorry you're experiencing, you had such a negative experience with our practice. Is there anything we can do to make it right? I'd like to refund every dollar you spent in our office. Take your prepay back or whatever it was at the time, including the services we already provided." Yeah. Because that person's not going to talk good about you anyway.
Right.
And probably what they're going to say is, "Oh, I went there a couple of times, it's wasted my money," or whatever. It happens, right? We all don't have 5-star Google reviews. I'm 4.9, but there's a couple that are thrown in there.
Sure.
And just do the right thing. It's sort of like the golden rule. Like, just always do the right thing with your patients, your staff, the people in your community, your spokes in your wheel of your referral machine. Just do the right thing. Just don't be an asshole. Golden rule, man,
So, and that's all absolutely brilliant. I love every word of it. You said that something about care plans, and back then it might be a 12-visit care plan. So with 30 years of experience and having taken care of so many people, what does a more typical care plan look like from the experienced practitioner?
Yeah, so I mean, I just threw a number. I don't know why I said 12. I just threw that number out of my head. But like we sit down and we talk about the couple different phases of care, and we've been through every practice management and coaching company out there, and we've sort of developed our own niche. But I let people know from the beginning that this is, if you're looking for a temporary patch, it's probably not the place for you. Right, it's cheaper and easy to continue doing your NSAIDs and a shot of Jack Daniels to numb the pain or whatever you're doing to cover up the pain. I tend not to attract those type of people that are looking for a quick fix, mm-hmm. right? But I noticed that people that train on exceptions acquire exceptions. right? Like coaching clients, like what do you do if a patient comes in and they want instant relief? And I was like, I don't know. I don't necessarily attract that. That's not what I put out in the universe. So, a typical patient is with us. I keep a couple stats in my office. And I want to see like what type of patient we have, and we have the personal injury patient, and we're the majority of our practice is self-pay, but we still help patients work with some of their insurance plans. But one of the stats I keep is how many years is the patient on the table that I'm about to adjust? How many years have they been a patient in my practice?
I love that.
And I actually have a little column, a little checkbox that I still monitor, and I don't keep as much stats as I used to. But for me, I go in the back room and I do a checkbox if it's 2 or more years, 5 or more years, 10 or more, 20. Tell you, move that little cheat sheet I have on my desk when I do my soap notes at the end of the day. I just have a grin and a smile on my face when I see more checkboxes in the 10 and 20 and 5-year people.
Oh, absolutely. That's super cool. So having had patients under care for so many years, I got to ask you a question, because again, you have a big successful practice. You're doing what you want to do. Is it still possible in today's world for a young doc or a doc who's less successful than they want to become wildly successful today?
If they so choose, right? Yeah. So there's always room for one more great XYZ profession in town, right? So I don't care if there's 100 chiropractors in town. You're going to find your people. I no longer, I currently don't have an associate. I've had associates for over 20 years in my practice, and I'm sort of designing the schedule where, I'm doing it myself at this point, towards the end of the head tape measure. And there's a guy down the block that comes in, and we adjust each other probably once a week, once every 2 weeks. And occasionally, he'll come in and he'll see one of his old patients in my practice, and he'll say something, and he's like, "Hey, I'm really glad that Lisa is still under chiropractic care, and I remember why she left, and it just wasn't working out for her schedule, or whatever it may be." Yeah. But for the most part, his people are his people. I could walk to his office. Yeah. We're not in competition. Exactly. We have a different niche. We have a different level of attraction. And I noticed over the years that whatever hobby I was involved in, again, getting back to don't be an asshole, whatever hobby I was involved in, there was all those people eventually flourished into my practice. Yeah. When I was scuba diving, like almost everybody in any one of my scuba classes eventually became a patient. And I didn't say, "Hey, I'm Dr. Joe. I would love the opportunity to check you for subluxations." Right? So they just knew who I was. They knew what I did. And then some people come in years later. And one of my responses is, you don't know you needed me until you needed me. Right. Right. And there's not a whole lot of people knocking on your doors, as Bill Estep would used to say, when he went to a chiropractor for the first time after going to a Renaissance seminar. He called the chiropractor. He's like, "Yeah, I'd like to make an appointment. Oh, where's your pain? Oh, I don't have any pain. I just want like an evaluation to see what level of subluxation degeneration my spine is in." Like, I don't know about you, but I've never received one of those phone calls. No. People come in for a reason, and some only, stay for a season or stay for a lifetime, but you got to love every one of them that comes in. Absolutely. But, so getting back to the circle of influence, and in my fishing community, it doesn't happen overnight, but I can tell you, and then my front desk is banging on the door. She's like, take them to lunch. Stop talking about tuna season. We have standing room only in here. So
Joe, time is starting to run short on our podcast here. So I've got to ask you 2 more questions. How do you define business success?
Business success. So from a chiropractic standpoint, how many of your patients went to chiropractic school to become chiropractors?
None, obviously.
So if you can inspire someone and influence someone to go on to chiropractic school and become a chiropractor, to emulate or reproduce or continue the legacy of what we created and become a chiropractor, I think that's the epitome of success.
I love that. Yeah, I was in a seminar one time, and the presenter said, you may have even been at that seminar also. the presenter said, how many chiropractors have you helped to make? Have you at least replaced yourself and then multiplied that by, and you fill in the number?
And it just happened. It just happened to me the other day. I had a patient. I treat his whole family on and off, and he came in and I said, hey, bud, how's lacrosse going? I said, you're in the lacrosse season. You're back with some injuries. How's colleges? Because he's actually my son's age, who, for one reason or another, has no interest of going into chiropractic, which is great. He's handy. He's actually going in the plumbers union. Will probably make more money than you and I ever had combined. So Evan told me, he says, Doc, I wanted to let you know, I know I was looking at medical school and different things, and I was knocking around the idea of becoming a pilot. He goes, I did all my research. He goes, I'm going to college. I'm doing all my pre-healthcare courses, and I'm going to go to chiropractic school.
That's fabulous.
And this just happened this week, so it's still going on. Of course, I was crunching numbers. I'm like, 4 years college, 4 years chiropractic school.
might be perfect.
I have something for you to buy when you get out.
See? All right, I think that's fabulous. And my last question is, how do you define personal success?
No, that's a great one. Personal success is having a handful or group of people that want to be around you and spend time with you. And what I mean by that is, there's the business side and the personal side, right? We work to get the financial ability to do the things we want to do. But if you can't share some of your hobbies and experiences with the people you love, your friends, your family, and you don't need a whole lot of them. You need a handful of them. I think that's really what comes down to personal success. And my kids are both, almost at that college age, and their enthusiasm and of wanting to spend time with their dad at this, it's slipping through my fingers, right? Like sand on a beach, trying to grab a handful of sand. So I'm definitely working less. I'm changing my office hours around. We're doing a 3.5 day work week. We're doing a 3.5 day weekend coming up this summer. It's my son's last summer before he enters the union. So we want to get out there and get on the boat and do some fishing and travel and spend some quality time. So personally, I think it's doing what you want when you want to do it, just because you want to do it. And an example is, I had a fillet knife and I sliced half my finger off filleting fish. And I went to the urgent care in town, and this guy, older guy like Patch Adams, walked in. He's like, hey, doc, and I fill out my profession and whatnot. He says, what did you do today? And he says, you probably don't know who I am. And I says, no, I'm sorry, I don't recognize the name. I've only lived in town here like about 12 years. He said, I'm Dr. So-and-so. I was the sports physical doctor for that local high school, and I was in practice 40 years. And you're probably going to ask me, and he had his hands on his hips, you're probably going to ask me why I opened up this brand new urgent care facility in the ShopRite shopping center. I said, yeah. I said, you 40 years in practice, I think that's enough. He says, well, I realized I worked so hard and focused on my practice for so many years that when I retired, I realized two things. Number one, I've never had time to develop a hobby. And two, I realized my wife and I really didn't like each other that much.
Ooh, ouch, ouch.
So he goes, and he was saying that, I'm sure jokingly, as a smile. But I don't want to hire chiropractic and then have to go open a joint down the block and do chiropractic, right? So I'm all about hobbies. You have to find a passion in life. And we already have a passion of helping people and getting people well without the use of drug surgery and all that, all those great cliches. But whether it's golf or scuba diving or fishing or just traveling or whatever it is, you need something. Mm-hmm. And that being able to do that with people you care about is the key to personal freedom and success.
Wow. I absolutely love that. Joe, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this interview. Dr. Joe Hudak, you are one of my heroes, and you're just fabulous.
Likewise, Rob.
All right. And that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.